Over the next 45 minutes or so, we'll be exploring the role and the importance of the digital offering during COVID-19, how business model evolution can really strengthen the brand and create sustainability for a business. We'll be discussing the future. We'll be looking at how we've innovated over this period of uncertainty throughout COVID, looking at some of the mistakes that we've made, and also sharing some of the best practice from two real key industry leaders in this space. So to introduce our team, I'll start off by introducing Jennifer. Jennifer is the International Retention Manager for Basic Fit, and I'll hand over to Jennifer to give a little more information about you.
I'm going to unmute myself. Thank you, Carl. I am the International Retention Manager at Basic Fit. Basic Fit is a budget operator. We have 831 clubs across the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, and Spain. We have around 2.5 million members. I'm just coming off of vacation, so all of my stats are a little bit fuzzy at this point. Yeah, I've been with Basic Fit for 5 years, and in the Netherlands for 10. I am Canadian, and my career started back in Toronto about 20 years ago at Good Life Fitness.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. And Ed, the founder and CEO of Block, do you want to give a little intro to yourself and the company?
Hi, yeah, thanks, Carl. Yeah, so I'm Ed Stanbury. I'm founder and CEO of Block London. We are a boutique operator from the UK. We have sites in London and Manchester, and have recently launched Block TV.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the intro. So I'll kick it off, and I'll direct this to Ed, if I would do, please. Ed, can you tell us a little bit about Block and also the digital transformation that you've gone through?
Yeah, so we started obviously as a physical studio in Hackney in London in 2016, and we've expanded from there to Shoreditch and then up to Manchester, which we opened last year. And then obviously when COVID hit earlier this year, we had to close our clubs and had to make a decision what to do next. And just purely by chance, really, our new head of data and digital had started 3 days before lockdown hit. And her job was really a 12-month project to look at the digital fitness market, work out sort of what the gaps in that market were, and put together a strategy for developing and launching into that market early in 2021. And obviously 3 days later, that all changed. And we gave her 6 weeks to launch the product. So 1st of May, we launched Block TV, and obviously 6 weeks is very different to 12 months. So the product is very different to what we thought it might have been. But we just felt, given the situation, the right thing to do was to get it out as quickly as possible. And so whereas the long-term plan would have been for probably an AI-driven, hyper-personalized app, everything on demand with possibly the occasional live class, to do that requires a long time and development and a lot of content. And we didn't have any of those things, particularly not time. So we just went for a mainly live product, filmed as much on demand as we could, as quickly as we could, but obviously that's difficult during a lockdown. And went for a live product with 30 live classes a day, and sitting alongside an on-demand product as well. And we launched that 6 weeks later. It's now being used in 134 countries. And we are currently in development of our version 2, which will be launching in September, and has a much wider on-demand offering, and a reduced live offering. But that live, what we've learned during lockdown is that there is a real place for that live offering. So we'll be retaining that, but it'll be pared back a bit with the on-demand taking the center stage.
Great, thanks, Ed. There's some really interesting elements there that I'd love to explore throughout this session. So we'll come back to those shortly. Jennifer, what about Basic Fit? What was the digital transformation that happened within your company?
Well, I was thinking about that a little bit in advance of the session. The digital transformation of Basic Fit, I think, has been underway for the past 5 years. because we're a budget operator, we're really focused on as much self-service as we can provide. And we've been really busy with that for many years. So for example, the way that you can join our club is either online or with a kiosk. Our customer journey, our onboarding phase is completely digital. We have digital services in the club where you can get exercise information or QR codes to a training program that you can download with your app. We have quite a lot of virtual content. We've been offering virtual classes for 5 years now in all of our clubs. And 3 years ago, we built our own studio and started producing our own classes in 3 different languages. So we fortunately have a lot of content, but what we saw during the lockdown was that there was a dramatic increase in participation on the at-home training options that we already had. Like, we had all these services, but the adoption of them and the implementation of them were mediocre at best. And then what the lockdown really did for us is that it really helped our members kind of cross that bridge on how to use the at-home digital services that we offered. Also during the lockdown, we launched a freemium app so that we could offer the Basic Fit app to non-members. And we also hosted quite a few at-home training days that we really had a big European-wide campaign on. And I think we got at some point over 4 million people training at the same time. So that was pretty exciting.
Wow, 4 million people training at the same time. That's a pretty powerful group exercise studio there, isn't it?
Yeah.
That happening. So I'd just like to expand on that further. What do you think are the fundamentals that need to be in place for consumers to have a great online experience? You talk about your own studio and producing your own content there. What's kind of been the learnings, considering that you pivoted throughout COVID but had this plan in place? What are the fundamentals that you'd recommend to the clubs on the call to make sure they've got the best experience?
I really think that it's got to be very clear for the person that's doing the class, what the level is of the class, what's involved, how long, like all of the general information that we sometimes take for granted has to be super clear for the person that's going to be doing the class. And there's a lot of willingness to try things at home in a living room that many members wouldn't do in a gym just yet. But there's also a lot of room for, there's no real physical instruction. So you've got to be careful and make sure that that the people who are doing the classes aren't going to go completely overboard, and you're still giving them an entertaining and safe experience.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. And for you, Ed, what would you recommend for Block with the expansion that you've had, and particularly now into more and more countries? What would you say are some of the basic fundamentals you need in place to create that real powerful online journey?
Well, I think it's something we got wrong, actually. I think early on we were very caught up with the backgrounds and making sure everything looked super smart, and that's important, that, you know, and as is the instructors and their engagement. But I think actually what we learned very quickly is the single most important thing is the tech. If you don't have the tech right, the systems for ensuring people get the links and know how to log in, and that the sound quality is right, and that the broadband quality is right, and without all of that, it falls apart very quickly, and people don't even get started on the experience before it falls apart. So I think that's the one thing I would say to small studios looking to get into this is, if make sure that you get the tech right before you start, because you'll just end up with lots of unhappy customers who didn't get what they thought they were going to get. Yeah,
it kind of steps back into what we talk about with just the experience in club and that live experience. If you walk into any group exercise studio or facility and the music isn't right and a microphone isn't working, it really limits the experience. So by looking at investing in the best possible tech that you can to your own budget, of course, definitely is something that we recommend from a Les Mills perspective. And we've pivoted into live streaming and other content as well. But early on, speaking to club partners, it really was a key thing to look at. So for you, Ed, what was the main reason for expanding and launching your digital services? You said you were pivoting into that space longer term anyway, and you recruited a role to take you into that space. But when COVID hit, was it down to additional revenue? Was it retention? What was kind of the initial mindset that you went into with that?
I think it was a bit of everything. I think from the club owners I've spoken to, it was a real split between people who just wanted to keep their existing customers engaged, and who they were gambling on how long lockdown was going to be. Was it 6 weeks? Was it 8? Or as it turned out, a lot longer? And therefore, could they afford to just be revenue free and survive on Instagram and just build a following and keep that retention? Or did they see this really as a long-term play and something that they saw themselves being a big part of their future? And for us, it was definitely the latter. It wasn't driven by one thing. Obviously, retention was important. Obviously, revenue is important when all your clubs are shut. And for us, you know, it's that global drive for expansion that we've always been sort of a big part of our ethos. Was something that we've always seen as digital as being a key part of. But I think it was all of those things combined, and we knew that we wanted to do block TV long term. So why not just get started with it? And obviously, it meant sort of doing things much faster than we would normally have done them, and being prepared to fail a bit and test and learn. But I think the decision we came to was that our customers would be understanding of that under the circumstances, and that the most important thing was just to get it out there as quickly as possible, and support our trainers. I think that's actually one I don't think you mentioned, but a big driver of the way we went with it was to support our 200 freelance instructors who, with all the gyms closed, suddenly had no work and weren't eligible for furlough. So for us, having means by which to keep them employed and paid was a big driver as well.
Great, thanks, Ed. And for you, Jennifer, with Basic Fit being across multiple different countries and different lockdown rates and issues happening in different locations and still happening to this day when we think about Germany and some of the regional lockdowns that are occurring out there, what was kind of your fundamental reasons to pivot towards this opportunity? You said that you'd already had it in practice, but was it retention? Was it engagement? Was it new members? Where was your thinking?
Really, it was keeping our existing members activated and engaged with Basic Fit, and still seeing the value of their membership even when the physical clubs were closed. And ultimately, it was when we launched the at-home app or the freemium app, it was really just an effort to keep people active, to keep sentiment up, because it was a really difficult time for a lot of people, and you were seeing that there was a lot of depression, motivation, lack of activity, a significant lack of activity compared to pre-lockdown. And you know, we're already in an inactivity epidemic in our world, so anything that shuts us down any further is terrible. So we were really trying to provide value to people for being a fitness resource, period, and especially to our members to make sure that they knew all of the things that they could still do with their Basic Fit membership, even though they couldn't go and visit the club at the time.
Okay, great, thank you.
There was one thing that Ed made me think about when he was talking about the tech problems when it comes to the digital fitness service. Is it okay if I loop back to that really quick?
Absolutely.
Okay, because that was definitely, I didn't think about it until you said that, but that was definitely in our early days a big learning for us, is that sometimes we were really lost in our own fishbowl in terms of how our systems work and how we understood how usable any of our services were for our members. And we made a lot of assumptions that people were just going to figure things out, and didn't really make the digital journey really visible for us. What was our customer seeing, and all of the phases when we were trying to get them to use the classes at home. And we found we believed that it was very easy to stream from our app to people's smart TVs, and that was actually a really big glitch. It wasn't working for a lot of people. But because we hadn't taken the time in the beginning to really make sure that we saw everything that our customers saw along the way, we missed a lot of problems that we could have solved with communication or explanation. So I think for the club operators that are going digital and that they're communicating with their customers via digital channels, it's not the same as having a piece of paper or a PowerPoint presentation. You really need to make sure that you can see all of the messages as your customers will see them, and test them with people who haven't used your service at all before launching them to the public. It's often a step that we have missed in time crunches, but we've always paid for it if we haven't taken the testing moment at the end.
Great, and I'd like to explore that further and just ask you both a quite a direct question, but something that I think our attendees would appreciate was, if you knew then what you knew now, what would you do differently? How would you have changed that implementation? And for you, Jennifer, would it be that digital glitch and that implementation integration into a smart TV, or would there be something different? What would you do differently if you were in that situation now?
Time for testing. Time for user testing, and possibly user groups in the beginning, to really understand exactly what the desire would be from our clients. And then once we knew that, making sure that we were communicating the steps in an effective way that we made the solution usable for them, and taking the time to really test that we had done that before launching on a larger scale.
Okay. And for you, Ed, if you knew then what you knew now, what would it be?
It's very difficult. I think with Jennifer's one, her then was quite a long time ago, as was only 3.5 months ago. So I think we're still learning. But I mean, what Jennifer said about the testing, 100%. Like we rushed to market. We had 6 weeks to get this thing out. We squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. We had testing built in, and we ended up taking it out because we took that time up redesigning to get the platform looking how we wanted it, but we didn't want to move the launch date, so the testing came out, and yeah, there were issues. It was a silly one, but the automated service we were using to send the Zoom links out to everybody had a problem with Microsoft email addresses. So Hotmail, Outlook, they weren't getting through. So anyone with those email addresses didn't receive their links. So in the opening weekend, we had 6,000 bookings and nearly 2,000 people didn't get their links because Hotmail blocked them. So if I could do things differently, would I have delayed the whole thing by 2 weeks to test? I don't know, given the circumstances. Normally, definitely yes. And with version 2 now, where that time pressure is not really there, 100% we're taking loads of time to test. At the time, we were 3 weeks into lockdown. Every moment mattered, and I think I would probably just go for it again. But yeah, I think moving forward, we definitely won't release another version without really thorough testing and making sure the tech's there.
Yeah, I appreciate the honesty there. I think as an industry, we've all become very adaptable to change very quickly and almost learning as we go. It seems to me, when I speak to a lot of operators out there, how quickly we went from digital's coming, it's going to be part of the future, to within 3 weeks actually having it as a key part of the strategic focus of the business as we move forwards. Definitely something in terms of testing and making sure that user journey, that customer journey is integrated is key. Want to move on to a little bit about the numbers, really, particularly during COVID, and you will have looked at the engagement rates, you've looked at activities. With Les Mills, we launched Les Mills On Demand over 3 years ago, but really launched with our partners from March 20th when clubs closed, and we were seeing up to 15,000 workouts a day. For you, Ed, what was the consumer response like at the beginning, and how did it grow or evolve? You said there are about 6,000 people in the first weekend. What was your sort of workout rates, and what was the engagement levels you experienced during COVID?
Yeah, well, the very first, obviously, we had to build the platform. So the very first thing we did actually was when we decided we were going to build it, we knew that it was going to take us a few weeks to build. So we reached out to Beats by Dre, and they sponsored a series of workouts on our Instagram first. So they sort of they gave us a bit of cash, which covered our development costs, and provided us all with all our instructors with headphones and mics. So that was really great, and we put it out on Instagram for the first, I think it was nearly 6 weeks, and the response to that was fantastic. We got really good numbers, and people were very supportive initially, and then as time went on, you started to see the cracks in how the Instagram platform works and why it's not ideal for digital fitness. And I think there was a real sort of surge in that Instagram engagement, which started to drop off just around the similar sort of time. So when we were launching our platform, not because we not because we came off there, but it just, I think people got bored of it. And yeah, when we launched the Block TV platform, yeah, the take up of it was great from the start. I think we were expecting it to be mainly our own customers. I think that's one thing that really surprised us, was that 82% of users over our first month were non-Block customers who'd never been to a Block class. And the scale of the international take-up, I think, was really surprising as well. As I said before, 134 countries in that 15 weeks that we've been operating, and that's pretty much all organic. We've spent about 10 grand on paid media, just testing bits around the world, but we've sort of that was all quite early on, and we stopped that while we're developing the new version. So it's pretty much all organic, and we've been really impressed with how it's with the take up on it. And in terms of the feedback, I think it's been really positive, because obviously our instructors weren't experienced digital fitness presenters. You know, they're used to running physical classes, and in some of those early ones, you could see they were a bit nervous, you know, and still getting used to presenting to a screen and not a room full of people. But I think the customers were really understanding of that and supportive, and it was new for everyone. Obviously, in those early days, it was all being done from people's bedrooms and kitchens as well. So it was a very weird sort of time for everyone on both sides of those screens, I think. But I think it was really great to see that engagement between the brand and the instructors and the customers. And I think people really bought into it. And obviously, now that we're coming out of lockdown, and the way it's all moving is slightly different, and I think we'll start to see a lot of people dropping out of that market and going back to opening their studios, and those who are remaining in it start needing to up the game a little bit in terms of not doing everything from people's bedrooms, and because people may not have that same patience for the tech issues and the nervousness and the bedrooms forever. Yeah,
definitely going to come back to that. I think that experience there is something that we've sort of accepted at the beginning of COVID, that people were pivoting and moving quickly, but definitely want to come back to that in terms of production values and how that you see that moving forwards. But just for Jennifer, you know, what was your initial engagement rates like when you went into lockdown? I know you had that platform already set up, but what did you see when clubs closed? Was there an increase in engagement? Did it spike at any period? What was kind of your findings of your membership engaging with that digital product?
Yeah, I wish I had the very specific numbers for you, but I can give you round numbers. I just couldn't get my hands on the reports quickly enough for the webinar. But pre-lockdown, we had about like 35,000 workouts a day on our digital platform. And that tripled, and at some point actually quadrupled during lockdown. So like we had days where we were almost at 180,000 workouts a day, but I don't have the specific number. What I do know is that plateaued and leveled off at around 100,000 workouts a day, and there it's stayed pretty steady since the lockdown, and even since our clubs opened again. And I think it's also one of the steps that we took is we sent out like a Corona sentiment survey to our members, and we got about 60,000 responses to that survey. And of those people who did respond, they said that the things that we were sort of expecting them to say, and a few that we didn't. And one was that 70% of them were significantly less active during lockdown. You had 19-20% that were more active than they would have been, and 10% that said that they were about the same. 60% of the people who responded said that they tried an at-home workout for the first time during lockdown. And those people also said that they would continue using at-home workouts as a supplement even once the clubs are open again. And I think one of the really interesting things that surprised us in terms of what people said that they missed most about the clubs, because we kind of listed all of our services, is they missed the equipment more than anything else, more than their personal trainers, their physiotherapists, their group exercise instructors. Equipment was the number one thing that people were missing about the club.
Yeah, we definitely saw that, didn't we? I mean, just looking at the people working out using paint cans and gallon bottles of water, small children in some spaces and pets, but people were finding innovative ways to bring their strength and resistance training into their workouts. I just come back to you, Ed, there. Really interesting point from Jennifer around customer feedback. Was there anything you'd like to share around some of the feedback that came from your members and some of your users? What did they find around the digital offering during COVID?
Yeah, I think we also did some surveys and had some similar results. I think 70% of people we surveyed said that they would continue to use Block TV alongside their existing gym membership even once we reopen, whether that gym membership happens to be Block or not. In terms of, I think equipment was quite high on our list of things that they missed as well, although I think the number one was actually the instructors and class fitness, but that's not surprising because that's all we do. Yeah, I think it definitely for a lot of people it was their first real delve into digital fitness. I think a lot of people haven't really thought it was for them until now, but then having tried it have realized that it does have a place. I think the vast majority, I think 95% said that they would definitely return to their gyms. But of those, 70% said that they would imagine themselves continuing to use digital fitness alongside it. Now, how many of those 70% keep to that once they're regularly back in the gym, we'll see.
Yeah, I think we saw early on, particularly in the UK, that there was some mixed responses about people's confidence as coming back into facilities. And there was a high percentage said that they wouldn't early on because of some of the negativity around it and the risks that were associated there. I suppose where we can pivot to next is, since the clubs have reopened, and Jennifer, obviously this has been a different rate for you across the European countries, but for you, Ed, since you've been reopened in terms of the physical facility, what changes have you seen with your digital offering? Has there been the same level of engagement? Has it dropped off? What have you seen?
It hasn't actually. We've been quite surprised. I mean, we've only been open for a few weeks, and it's a monthly membership. So we'll have to see how that pans out. It may be that over the next month or two, we do start to get some churn. But I think that we've got a new product launching next month anyway. So hopefully we'll see a new influx of people coming in with that. And at the moment, our full live product, which includes 30 live classes a day, is £80 a month. So that will be being cut right back, and the full product will be much, much cheaper than that. I think the final price is still TBC, but it's likely to be more like £20. Any Block membership will include access to Block TV anyway. So I think those guys the ones who are Block customers will continue to use it. Obviously, the 80% who are not customers of Block may be going back to their other gyms. Whether they continue to use Block TV alongside their existing gyms, we'll see. But so far, touch wood, we're only a few weeks into reopening. We haven't seen any drop off as yet.
Okay. Great, thanks, Ed. And for yourself, Jennifer, different open rates. What's been the engagement rate for the online classes compared to the in-club experience? Is it stayed the same, or is it switched?
Well, like I said, we have kind of plateaued in terms of the online participation, but it's significantly higher than it was pre-lockdown. It's also really stimulated because we've put a big effort in additional content, continual additional content. So we launched audio training programs that can be used for either cardio in the club or outdoor running. There's podcasts that are happening every week. We've added 8-minute workouts to the mix. So there's just constantly an influx of extra content with campaigns behind it. So the online workouts are about the same, but the overall engagement in our app, which is basically our member hub, like that's our self-service hub with all of the fitness services and all of the member administration services. That's really increased because of the additional focus. So I mean that's sort of been the blessing in disguise for us as an organization, is that we just really united as a team on really making sure that the digital channels were effectively implemented and loaded with our members during this time, and that's had a really positive result in terms of what we can do in terms of member reach and member activation for all of the different services.
Great, thanks for sharing that, and it's good to see it's a much more diverse product than just simply those live classes. That experience is great. Just before I move on to a couple of final questions, just want to encourage our attendees to post any questions in the Q&A box in Zoom. We do want to make this as interactive as possible. Would love to know if you have any direct questions for any of the panel. We'd love to answer those. Moving on. For you, Jennifer, what's the general outlook moving forward? What do you think the consumer really wants now, coming out of lockdown in different markets and some markets actually going back in again? What do you think the consumer wants, and is it a growing market in that digital space?
I definitely think it's a growing market in the digital space, and I'm sure that that you're seeing the articles that are being posted in our sector about it. Like there's huge year-on-year growth for what people are paying for on-demand fitness, and everybody's hearing how like there's a battle for your spare bedroom from all of the at-home equipment providers. I think that I really think for a lot of people, and a lot of people that I've spoken to, and a lot of the qualitative research that I've seen from our customers, is that we really need to be gentle with them, because the whole fitness habit for people who aren't completely gung-ho on fitness is a really complicated relationship, and it's not always filled with feelings of success. And for many people, this period has been a real setback in their progress, in their habits, and in their health. And we need to really gently help them get back on track. And I think if we can kind of if we can take that approach with people and really start celebrating small successes and really showing them how like the digital fitness offering, it can definitely continue to help their overall fitness strategy. Because for a lot of people, and what I understand from a lot of our members, is they enjoyed using it during the lockdown, but they still see it as a part of what they'll use moving forward, because they see it as a great either how do I say this, like an alternate. So when they can't make it into the club, when they can't book it into their class, they always have a kind of arsenal of workouts that they can do wherever they are. So I think we should also look at the digital offering as that, just to help people stay active no matter what.
Okay, great. And for yourself, Ed, where do you see it going? How do you see the market moving forwards, and what's kind of your consumer outlook?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely growing, isn't it? It's only going to grow. And you said, what do customers want? I think to a large extent, what they want right now is to be back in the gym, but knowing it's safe and for this pandemic to be over. But what you want isn't always what you get, and I think that it's not going away anytime soon. And I think as long as that's in place, there will be a lot of people either not completely comfortable going to their gym if the gyms are open, or not able to get in because the gyms aren't open or are at capacity because of social distancing, and or self-isolating. And so for all of those guys, even if they want to be in the gym, at home fitness it becomes your best option. But I think long term, as we were saying before, it's definitely something that people are gonna, the convenience of I don't think it replaces the physical gym at all. I think, we're definitely not seeing this as the end of us expanding physical sites. We're still working hard on those, and we'll be very keen to continue that physical expansion. But we definitely see the digital as being something that sits alongside that, not just as a tool and an additional service to our physical members, but to a standalone audience as well.
Right. And you mentioned earlier, I said I'd come back to it, about the quality of the experience, workouts in people's bedrooms, filmed on an iPhone or other methods as well. What do you think that consumers really want, coming out of this and looking at that digital experience? It was accepted in the early days that we could get away with some of those workouts. As consumers become more savvy and there's abundance and a proliferation of workouts available online, how do you think that that's going to change consumer wants and needs?
I think it will vary. I think I don't think it's going to be a sudden shift. I think it will build. I think people have been very understanding of some very rough offerings, both in terms of the tech and in terms of the background and in terms of the nerves of the people running the classes. I think they've been really understanding of all of that. And I think that understanding is still there. But I think as people become more and more used to it, and there's more and more slick offerings out there, people will begin to expect a bit more. In terms of, I think for the live and the on-demand, it's slightly different. For me, I think the live, you can still get away with, the main thing for the live is you need the tech. The clarity has to be perfect. People have to be able to get on there, see it clearly, hear it clearly. But actually the personality of the instructor engaging with those people on that class, and not just in a sort of broad way, but in a specific personal way, sort of calling out names and engaging, giving feedback. I think that stuff is super key, and probably more important than whether they're in a beautiful fitness studio or in their front room, as long as it's not, they haven't got the laundry out hanging out. But I think with the on-demand, I think that's where really people have a right to expect more. I think, at that point, it's not the instructor from home giving a one-to-one service. It's you as a brand having put your stamp on the content and gone out and filmed this stuff. And I think at that point, really, you should be providing something that looks great as well. And I think that the consumer has the right to expect that. And I think they do expect that. It doesn't need to be, some of the Les Mills stuff is like somewhere between a fitness video and the Chinese opening ceremony. You've got the production values are amazing, but I don't think consumers necessarily need that. But I think on-demand stuff from people's bedroom isn't what people want either. I think it's finding that balance.
Yeah, and it's key. Talk about production values there, and at Les Mills, we do invest heavily in our production, which is kind of evolved over a number of years, and we wanted to make sure that we have the best possible experience. But we've launched a live streaming product as well. We've encountered the same things in terms of instructors delivering content at home on behalf of their facilities to their participants as well. And I think you're absolutely right. I would agree that it's about the consumers now looking for that next level, and we'll come back to maintaining that advantage, competitive advantage in just a moment. But for Jennifer, for you, I think I'll ask the same question that I asked to Ed. You know, what's the production values that you're aiming for, and how can you make sure that you've got the quality that represents the brand?
Yeah, I think in terms of our on demand, that's something that we're constantly evaluating and improving, and we are actually bringing the members in to help us and give us feedback on that. So it's in this constant improvement cycle. Basically every release that there's a review and an improvement for the next one. I'm curious though, because I'm not sure how I necessarily define live offerings, because it seems like it's so diverse. Because I know I've participated on like Zoom classes in one of my dance studio classes, and of course you've got like the Peloton experience. Like how do you define? This is a just kind of a question for the universe. Like, how do you define the live offering for digital? Like, what's in that net when you cast it?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think really it's that real time experience, you know, happening in that, you know, watching a football match or a sporting event live, and you're up to date with the action. I think that's the difference, and looking at it being delivered in that time at 7 p.m. on a Monday evening, that you're all engaged as you would do a regular class, and then the on-demand is the pre-recorded and how you evolve it from there. So there's some elements there around interaction. You know, how do we get smarter with interaction? At the moment we use chat function and we're engaging with people that way. Is there a different way of engaging? As technology improves, how do we enhance that live experience? I suppose there's a number of different ways you could look at that.
Yeah. Okay. So then I really think in the live element, what I understand from the feedback that we've received is that it's the personal connection. The instructor in that case is really important. Like, people are showing up for a live class for the instructor in many cases, and not to feel alone. So seeing the other participants, whether they physically see them or can tell that there are more than just them out there doing the class, becomes really important for the live offering.
Yeah, it's a lonely experience. If anyone's ever delivered a live class online, unless you've got a group of people in front of you, it's very lonely. It's almost as if we're interacting now over a video call.
Yeah.
But not having that feedback in that moment, it's quite disconcerting for instructors.
Weird. Yeah.
It's very, very different. And and in fact, some instructors quite like that, because they can be more themselves without the fear of reprisal and being judged because they can't see the responses. But that's another conversation. I suppose really coming up to the final two questions from me, really, and to Ed, really. I don't want you to give away too much, obviously, because there are competitors on the call, but how are you looking to maintain competitive advantage? You know, barriers to entry have been broken down in the digital space now. Geographical barriers no longer exist. You know, you're no longer competing with clubs a mile away. You're actually competing with other operators throughout Europe, because we've broken down those barriers where people can engage in content in different ways. How would you summarize your strategy around maintaining your competitive advantage in the digital space?
Is that for me or?
Yeah, sorry, Ed, that was for you. Went on a little bit of a monologue there, but yeah, simple question at the end.
Well, I mean, I think rather than competitive advantage, I'll consider it a niche and a sort of USP. So I think for us, there's two things that set Block apart. One is our real focus on design and beautiful content. That comes naturally to us because my business partner Max Oppenheim is originally a fashion photographer and designer and videographer. That's his background, and so everything we do, that sort of, you know, we're actually better suited as a digital company than a physical company in a lot of ways, because we've always obsessed about content, but never really had anything to do with it before, apart from put it on Instagram. So you know, I think that the production values and quality and aesthetics of the content and is a huge thing for us. But in terms of the classes, the variety of classes we have and focus on learning, progression, and skill-based training, and it not being just about burning calories and sweating and heart monitors and that stuff. I think that really is what is our, as I say, I don't see it as necessarily a competitive advantage, I see it as a niche. We appeal to people who want more than just to sweat. They want to learn how to do a handstand, or how to do a pistol squat, or how to box properly, or calisthenics. We do all of these things to a really high technical level. You can totally turn up as a beginner. It's all levels, but we really focus on that, getting to know yourself, getting to know your body, and understand movement, and as well as sweating. We have strength classes and all that as well. But I think that sort of that focus on that progression and learning is really where we stand apart, I think.
Thanks, Ed. And for you, Jennifer, I suppose similar question. You're operating in the low cost space, and there seems to be a low cost operator opening up every few months in different markets, and you've got different locations in terms of your physical presence. How are you going to maintain competitive, given that it's a very, very competitive environment that you're operating in?
I think our new club opening team works like a finely tuned machine. So we can get to the point where we're opening 4 clubs a week, and we have a really aggressive rollout strategy and continue to do so despite the COVID situation. I think for Basic Fit, the goal is to make fitness accessible to everyone, and we've got like the Fitness Somewhere is our physical locations, and you can as a member you can train in 831 growing to 1,000 clubs as soon as possible across Europe. And then we've also got the Fitness Anywhere. So as a club operator, I think we're really unique in the fact that we've really taken digital steps where a lot of operators haven't quite gotten there yet. So we would like to play in both of those spaces, because we see how they can complement each other. And there's already a base and a belief and a success within our membership base with both of these offerings. So we're just going to continue to improve and grow in both of those areas.
Great, thank you. It's been really fascinating talking, guys, and we are coming towards the end, and would like to open up to any questions. If people would like to pose the questions, we haven't really come through so far. But my final question for both of you is, if you could give one piece of advice to any of our operators that have joined us today, what would be the number one thing that you would focus on if you were to pivot to a digital-only strategy within your business? What would be the big piece of advice you'd give to any of our operators? And I'll pose that to Jennifer first.
If they're moving to digital only in terms of everything, like
offering. Yeah, if they were to have a digital pivot away from their live offering into the digital space, should we go into another lockdown tomorrow, what would be the one thing that they could do?
I really think that it's so important to constantly have a user group that you can bounce off your ideas with. Because when you get a group of crazy fitness people that go into a room and come up with an idea, we sometimes forget the real needs that are happening, and we forget to build bridges for all of the different people that are represented in our market. So I would say really make sure that you have customer feedback constantly in place, that you can reflect and adjust anything that you're doing in terms of product development.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. And for you, Ed, what would be the one thing?
Well, I mean, the actual one thing, I'm repeating myself, so the actual one thing would be the tech and the testing. I think, that is just so key. But we've covered that already. So I'll say, don't lose sight of the why and why you got into this, who you've built your brand for, and what it is they want. And I think there's a lot of talk at the moment about pivoting digitally because it's the sort of the hot topic. But I think don't give up if you're on your physical business because of what is a temporary situation. This is a temporary situation. It might not be as temporary as we'd all hoped, but it is. And I don't think this is the end of the physical gym business at all. And Jennifer clearly doesn't, because they're trying to hit 1,000 any day now. So don't lose sight of that. Don't neglect your physical clubs. Chasing a digital dream that might not be right for you and your brand and your customers. But if you're going to, get the tech right.
So yeah, 100% agree with both of what you say. The user testing, the feedback and bouncing ideas, it's ensuring that you get that reliable feedback. But personally, from a Les Mills perspective, I agree. Getting the tech right, getting the experience, the sound, the audio, the physical experience needs to be world class. And I do also believe that consumers are going to get more savvy. You know, there is as I said before, an abundance of content available through YouTube, through social media channels, and people are almost sport for choice into what they're looking for. But really, the quality is going to shine through longer term, and having that high quality experience across your facilities will really make the difference in terms of engaging your members for longer. And it would bring it back to how instructors are recruited as well. We didn't really have time, but I'd love to have explored how your recruitment strategy would have changed now in terms of recruiting instructors and having not just that live charisma and that personality, but how you would then train instructors over a longer period of time to engage with the camera, how you engage with an audience that isn't there. You know, that virtual ability. It would be great to explore that in more detail, but we are running out of time. I suppose just to wrap up then, just want to thank everybody for logging in today and joining us. Big thank you for Jennifer for joining us.